All right, so what I'm going to talk about is kind of how do you get going with this project, okay? And so the idea is to look at a certain kind of approach, an ethnographic approach. And it's kind of, I'm going to give you two main tools here, humanistic design as an approach, and a customer-centric innovation map, okay? And so we'll talk about what each of those is. So we kind of start with the question, well, then how do you communicate with your customers? We use this first approach, this humanistic design. Have you guys heard of humanistic design before? I mean, you guys are maybe familiar a little bit with design in general. Humanistic design, you know, when you design something, a lot of times you design it to make sure that it is useful or viable. Maybe it's commercially viable, right? Maybe you're going to make money from it. Maybe it's something that's going to actually work, right? So it's going to be feasible as well. With humanistic design, you start with the customer. You start with the customer's needs, okay? And that's going to be the important thing here. You start with them. That's why we call this an ethnographic approach. You're going to learn about your customer, if you will. Each of you with your projects has a customer, or even maybe multiple customers. So a couple things here. Voice-controlled bed. Who's in that project? Anybody here? Jake, I think you're in that, right? So who would be the customer for that?
Hospitals.
Hospitals could be. Yep. And who else might be a customer? Well, and what I'm really talking about is who's the customer on your specific project. So yes, if you create a voice-controlled bed, maybe you would sell it to a hospital or whatever. But in particular with this, it'll be a person, right? A person that you will probably need to interview or talk with, right? So that's kind of where we're starting with that. But that's good that you are thinking about these other ideas too. How about for soccer goals? So what? Who would be the customer for that?
Could be first our school will have soccer goal, so it could be the school.
Could be the school.
Yeah. Could be
Sports center. Sports center. Yeah. The sports center. So and in particular, and that's a nice thing you've got Andy Melton, who runs the rec center here, and so he would be the first one. But then it might be the actual customers might be the actual student workers who he tells to bring the soccer goals out, right? So and store them and fold them back up and whatnot. So those will be people that you'll want to talk to find out, well, what how does this actually get used? Classroom design. Who's in that one? You are, right? So, Yusef, who would be the customer there? Students and instructors, right? Because instructors want things set up in a certain way, but you also need to kind of figure out, well, what is it that the need is? What do students desire in terms of sitting there and learning in the classroom as well? So you're going to need to talk to a couple different people. Born scuff prevention, right? Who would that be?
I'd say pretty much almost any company that has hard wood floors and could potentially have chairs like these that could get scuffed.
Okay, because and you're thinking scaling up, right? But initially it'll be probably Dr. Romo, right? So
yes.
she'll say, oh, okay, but there may be other people who would be good to talk to as customers. Maybe it's our housekeeping staff here, right? Because maybe they know what ends up scuffing things here. So that'll be an interesting thing to look at. And then Hilltop Campus Village, who might be? I'll show who might be a customer here.
I think anybody who really wants to use it, but mostly in the university.
Yeah. So it might be. Maybe it'll be, and of course you'll have to you don't know exactly until you learn more about the project, but probably you're talking about students here, but it could be faculty and staff, from the university who want to use businesses in the Hilltop, but it could be, in fact, anybody who's coming along here who wants to use the Hilltop too. So maybe that's multiple people. You'll have to decide how you want to help define that. So that's where we start. We start humanistic design with the need of the person, and it actually gets more than just the need. You have to develop empathy. Okay, so it's also about empathy. So for instance, IDEO, the design firm, they have used humanistic design quite a lot, and one of their projects was to look at an emergency room in Cleveland. And they decided to kind of go up undercover and have a hidden camera, and they pretended that they had a hurt leg, and they went through the whole emergency room process. And I don't know if you've been in an emergency room, that's not exactly a pleasant experience, right? You're sitting there doing lots of waiting, probably have lots of questions about what's going on, and then you end up getting put into some kind of room, which is really just a curtain, and you hear all these sounds around you, and sometimes they're not very pleasant sounds because there's lots of people in the emergency room that have problems, right? And so they videoed this and kind of walked through the life. They were trying to be empathetic with the person that's going through this process, just like you guys did with your disability simulation on Tuesday, right? You were trying to have some empathy for people in that situation. So the idea then is you take that and you take that information and you go from there and you start down the design process. And so we're going to talk more throughout the semester about this design process. This is just one design process. This is really IDEO's design process. It starts with inspiration, this idea of what is the problem, or from my neck of the woods, what is the opportunity, right? The opportunity to help create a solution, right? The inspiration is where that opportunity starts in terms of how you might come up with some kind of solution. But we don't get to the solution until way later, right? We go through an ideation process, and we'll have a class in here talking about how do you brainstorm in your team, and implementation is about doing quick prototyping, and we'll be doing prototyping and eventually setting up an actual solution for your particular project. Okay? But today, we're going to focus on the inspiration part, how might you use it. So that sort of assumes that there is some kind of solution or value that you can create for someone when there is a problem. And each of your projects has some kind of problem or opportunity that you're going to develop on. Okay. So let's talk about a couple skills or things that you will be focusing on in this inspiration part of the design process. One is observation. This is an easy way to start with things. You observe what's going on. Sometimes in the class, I'll take students on an observation walk, so an opportunity walk, we call it. Okay, we go outside, and the idea is you look around and you observe and you write down where somebody has created an opportunity. And in my world, it's how has somebody been entrepreneurial? How has someone created a business opportunity? So actually, let's just take a minute in this classroom to just look around, and I want you to think of what you see as what somebody has created as an opportunity. Let me give you an example. The chair. Somebody realized that we have a need in the classroom for people to sit down and rest, because sometimes it's hard to just stand the whole time. Although as professors, we end up standing the whole time, right? But that's an opportunity, right? Somebody has a company, right? This is probably Han, who has made these chairs to serve a particular customer need. Right? And the customer in this case is our students and the university who has purchased these. So just take a minute and look around the room and see what you can see as opportunities. And then I'm going to ask you for a couple examples. Peyton, what, give me an example.
This whole device that you're kind of wearing, it kind of videotapes you as you walk around the classroom.
Yeah, that's a really interesting thing. It serves a particular need that we have that maybe somebody wouldn't have thought of, right? It serves this need of trying to get, record what it is that we're doing here in the classroom, right? Give me another example, David.
Projector.
Projector, right? How do you get people to see what you're doing rather than just using a whiteboard or a chalkboard, right? So it gets to show that. Give me one more.
The other screen.
The other?
If someone's sitting in here, they cannot look at it.
Yeah, and then it allows the teacher also to kind of see right, without having to look back here, because sometimes this kind of shines off here, so it's kind of nice to see maybe a clearer thing. So yeah, so and of course we could go on and on and on, right? In fact, there's maybe thousands of things just in here, you know, even on what we are wearing and whatnot, that are actually opportunities that companies or people have helped to define customer needs and brought them to fruition, right? So that's the first thing, is for you to start thinking about observing in a way where you see opportunities. And so one other practice that you could do is when you come to class, maybe you actually observe what's going on as you walk, because we tend to just, you know, automatically. Or maybe you take a different walk around to your class and see, well, what's different? Might a different route be actually better than the way that you chose? So observation is where it starts. Observation is different than insight, though, folks. So insights are not ideas themselves. Insights are just your interpretations of the observations, okay? And so you need to be able to observe, but you also need to be able to gather insight from that, so that you can then turn that insight into an idea, okay? Well, I'm going to show you a little video. This is a little video about the creation of the invisible bicycle helmet. Okay, how many of you bike or ride a bicycle? Yep. So do you wear a helmet? You don't. Okay. How come you don't wear a helmet?
Don't find any for it.
Okay. So you don't find a need for it. So you feel, oh, you're probably safe enough, right? That type of thing, right? So let's take a look at what these Swedish entrepreneurs did for getting this idea. And I want you to think about what observations they did and maybe what insight they came away with. So what they observed and what people said to them was, in fact, well, just what you said. I don't find a need for it. I don't see, I'm pretty safe, right? And that's what people were saying. But when they looked further, when they observed further, and they found the insight was that, in fact, people just didn't want to wear that ugly thing on their heads, right? So some people in the biking world, they, you know, you're wearing those tight shirts and the thing and the whole outfit. But a lot of people don't really want to do that, right? So, and in particular, they found, oh, you know what? Then we need to make, what if we could make an invisible bike helmet? And so then basically they're using what, you know, crash type of technology, right? That where just kind of balloons up over your head and it protects you when it notices that you're tipping over, right? Just like take your the Apple Watch and stuff like that with this technology inside. It tells you, it knows when you're tipping over and things like that. So wow, what a neat thing to come up with, but it means going beyond that initial observation that people are telling you, hey, I just don't, this isn't, just don't want to wear it. Well, you also don't want to wear it because it might look kind of silly and mess up your hair or whatever, and you don't want to carry around that extra helmet or whatever. And so instead, here, you're wearing something that's basically visible until you actually move it. Okay, so that's observation and insight. Here's one way that you can use to get, try to get some insights from your observations, okay? So there's a lot of ways to observe, and so the idea is, well, what should you focus on when you're observing? And so this is a method, the AEIOU method. It's easier to remember because of the acronym here, right? So what you do is you start thinking about things like activities. What is it that people are actually doing? So if you are, for instance, just going to think about, so the voice-controlled bed, you might think, well, what kinds of activities is the person going to use the bed for? So maybe that will give you some ideas as to what kinds of voice controls might be needed, right? The environment, how are people using the environment itself? If you are doing the coffee house one, the line that's too long, well, what are people doing? How are people using that environment? Are they taking test samples of coffee and stuff like that? Are they looking around at other products? Are they just interacting with each other? Is it actually a social event to stand in line as you get your coffee, right? Interactions, what kinds of interactions are going on? So again, with the coffee shop, interactions in line or interactions behind the counter too, right? If you are thinking about, let's see, what's another? Classroom design, for instance, what interactions are people going to be doing? Do you need, so for instance, in here, we've got round tables, right? This allows you to interact together, but there might be a cost, right, in that you're interacting together, but you're not necessarily interacting with the professor, so you need to make sure that there's a way for the professor to get around and stuff, and to move between tables and things like that, right? Objects, what kind of objects are being used? So what are the physical things? So with the soccer goals, what's the, if you are folding, if you're creating foldable soccer goals and storing them somewhere, well, are there obstacles to get around when you are moving it from the storage center somewhere else? So that might give you constraints as to, well, how big should this be? How skinny should it be? How accessible should it be? What about if you have it on rollers or something? Are there barriers to actually getting it over something, right? What are those objects? And then users. And that's, again, the idea of the customers that I was just talking to you about. Who are the users? In the classroom, it's both the faculty and the students. And you could actually add who else might be a user of a classroom. Maybe it's even housekeeping, right? So you might want, or it might even be IT. So you want to, if IT comes in and tries to help out on something, is there easy access to things, right? If it's cleaning the room, is it easy enough to go ahead and sweep or mop or whatever, or wipe the table or whatever it is, right? So this is something that you can use. You can easily Google AEIOU technique, and you can find templates online. I think Stanford University has a number of templates with this that you could use. Let me show you another example of this idea of observations, right? The idea of toothbrush, designing a kid's toothbrush, and some of the thought process that went through designing a that's exactly what you guys could do. Is to be thinking like this. And this is the technique to start with, to use as you're doing the observations. And it's an easy thing to do. You just need to take the time, and you can split it up, and you know, each person's maybe thinking about something different, and then you just write it down. You write down the observations. Okay. All right, so this is just really critical with this particular phase. It's important to, it's a great skill to have, being a listener, being able to pay attention to what your customer wants, and then being able to talk to the people in an interview is also a skill. That it takes time, it takes practice, and so that's why hopefully you'll have many other projects that you'll end up working on where you can do something like this too. But this is what's important here. Okay, so let's talk about an interview as well, because that's what you might also do. So it's observing, but it's also maybe talking to those customers. So what are you going to do? You're going to want to determine who do you want to talk to, and maybe it starts with these different users. Start with somebody first, and with each person that you interview, maybe you ask them, who else should I be talking to? That would be something good. Maybe draft some general questions that you might start with, and then ask follow-ups. Okay, but keep it conversational. You don't want to be robotic in your things and ask. You know, when you write down a question, sometimes it doesn't come across the way that you would actually say it in conversation, right? So keep the tone conversational when you were talking to people, but just remember how you might follow up. So here's an example about what you might do to introduce yourself to somebody who you want to interview. So here it says, hello, I am Antonia, part of the student project team at St. Ambrose University in Davenport, Iowa. I was referred to you by Dr. Prosai, or Dr. Sanderson, or Dr. Rummel, professor of engineering at St. Ambrose. We're interested in talking to you about your need of, and then let's state it, maybe it's need of optimizing the line of the coffee shop. We would like to start by setting up an interview where we can find out more about your needs. And then you could also say, and if you have somebody who you think we should be interviewing, let me know. You just start with something as simple as that, right? Then maybe that's in an email also. Maybe it's how you craft an email. Then when you are asking and having this conversational interview, you can start to be thinking about these things in terms of follow-ups. So you want to be asking about the challenges that they're facing. You might want to ask them, how do you talk about these challenges, right? Talk positively or talk negatively? What are some of the things they are considering? And where is it that they see maybe their biggest pain in this problem, right? What are they doing about it? So think about asking them questions of how do you manage? How are you dealing with this problem as it is? How do you feel about it? And then what is it? What are some of those emotions that they have that's actually driving what they're currently doing? Okay. And the idea there is to find their pain here. Let's see. So you can conduct the interview, just state your purpose, take notes. Do you have your engineering notebook yet? Make sure you find that. That's what you can use your notebook for, is these kinds of questions that you're asking and stuff like that. And again, use the questions as a guide. Be an active listener. So that means that you are being present with what they're saying, and you repeat back what it is that they say so that you make sure you've heard it correctly. Okay. All right, so just some good questions, spec questions here. So you don't want to ask too serious of questions right away with them, right? You need to kind of break it in, get to know them a little bit. You don't want to bring your assumptions to bear. You don't want to just ask yes or no questions. It's better to have open-ended questions. You want to be a good listener You don't want to make it seem like a sales pitch. Oh, well, you're helping me get an A in class or something like that, right? And of course, you don't want to be insulting to them. And make sure you talk to them in the language that is appropriate. So what should you be doing? Maybe asking permission again before, like maybe you do want to record your interaction with them. Ask them ahead of time. You're going to take pictures of different things, different aspects of the environment. Ask them for permission. Think about what is their pain, right? Where is where are the emotions in them dealing with this problem? So look at that. And where is it that, what is the top priority of their pain? Because they might have a list for you of things that are important, right? You say, well, what's important here? And they might have 5 things, but see if you can't figure out what really those number 1 and number 2 is. Okay. Find out, well, what are they doing currently, and then don't hesitate to dig deep once you get to know them more, and then find a story about what is really important. We did a project once with a community garden. We built a community garden, and so we had a bunch of different people in the community who were helping to tend the garden and then harvest it and whatnot. And we gotten a call to try to, the idea was they wanted us to make these raised garden beds. And we were saying, okay, well that might be good. If you garden with a raised garden bed, it's nice because you can either stand or you can sit while you're doing it instead of, having to bend over and whatnot with the garden. And the woman in charge of the garden basically told us a story of the summer where they were doing the gardening. She saw this man crawling across the garden, across this field to the garden, and then in the garden doing, pulling the weeds and whatnot. And she was like, what are you doing? What's going on here? And this was a person who was in a wheelchair, but had to park their wheelchair far away because they couldn't get their wheelchair up to the garden. And so that was a story that stuck out that really, I think, gave us an idea as to what is that pain that we're trying to solve here. And it is getting that access to that raised bed. Not just that, so it's not just creating and building the raised beds, which we did. We built the raised beds, and you had to make them the right size so that if you have a wheelchair, you can actually use it, because if it's too high, you still can't use it, right? So you had to make it the right size, and then we had to create a road too to access the raised bed there. So you had to think of all those different things, and it was that story that was really driving what we were thinking of. And so with your projects, if you can find that story that can really be something that helps clarify what you're trying to do, what you're trying to accomplish. After the interview, of course, look at your notes, look for different themes, use reflection, practice reflection. We're going to have a class talking about reflecting in your journal. Consider how maybe you could have done something different or asked something different. And you can always follow up with emails with your clients here. This is another thing that you could do after your interview as well, which is use the empathy map. Okay? Again, this is something you can find online. What you might want to do is start with the problem statement. So in fact, let me ask you, Saud or Yusuf, for soccer goals, what would be the problem statement here? So a stakeholder, let's say the stakeholder is the rec center. Okay, let's just say, so you say the rec center needs a way to what? They need a way to store the soccer goals. Okay? They need a way to store the soccer goals because, and I'm just going to put in something here, because 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 they lack storage, okay? And of course, that's something that you'll have to find out. What is it? Why is it that they want this, right? So we can come with our own thought here with a statement, but maybe finding out more about what that statement is going to help drive what your solution is going to be. And so the other thing is you can look at what is it in the interview, what did they say? What did they actually say? What were some of the quotes that could be useful here? What did they do? Right, so write down, look at your notes, what did they actually do? How did they think about their problem? What were they thinking? What things did they consider, for instance? And then how did they feel? What was that pain that they expressed to you? Okay? And those are ways then, and the reason why you do this is so that you can make sense of the information that you've got. This is a way of reflecting when you're looking, categorizing, and then all of a sudden you might get an idea. This is the way that we should go with this. This is the key. This is the thing that's going to help the paint, right? This is the key to the project. So this is, again, another way of being empathetic with your customer for your project. Okay. Now I'm going to talk about the second tool. So give you that first tool, the humanistic design, doing the observations and creating insights. However, there is some criticism about the humanistic design. The criticism is that sometimes asking the customers doesn't actually always generate the most promising ideas. Okay? So think about Apple, for instance. Right? Does Apple go out and ask their customers what they need? No, they design something, they come up with something, and then people realize, oh, you know what? I actually did need an iPad, right? Or my iPhone, my iPhone is actually my life, right? So it's not just. So by asking a customer, the customer doesn't always have all the answers, and so the idea is, well, how do you get the most creative ideas, or try to expand on those insights? And so I'm not saying you shouldn't do what I just talked about. You should do all of that, but then you should maybe do this customer-centered innovation map as well to get as many ideas. And so the idea here starts with that that people hire products or services to get something done, to get a job done. Okay, and this is from your reading, or the Betancourt reading. And so, for instance, a surgeon hires a scalpel to do surgery. Right? You hire a car to get to the airport. For instance. We all hire things to get a job done. And by using this map that this process requires, is that you break things down and you are able to find more innovative ideas. Okay, so I will. So let's go through each of these steps. So every job to be done has these number of steps involved. Okay, and if we start with the first one, so customers really they want to determine, well, when they use your product or your service that you created, they are looking at their goals and how they're going to use it, right? So an example is for Weight Watchers. Weight Watchers has a service of how you lose weight and stuff, and so they create this plan of assigning points for each meal, and so it's easier to track what it is that you're eating, and those points are related to the nutritional value and how many calories that you have, so it's not so hard to actually follow. So the idea is what you can do with this step is simplify planning. So for instance, with the coffee shop has this line out the door, right? So that's their problem with, people might wait in line too long. So what might you do to simplify that, simplify the planning when people are looking to use the coffee shop and they see this line? What might simplify it? What does Disney do for lines, for instance?
Yeah, Fast Pass.
Okay, so they use, so Fast Pass, so they have a way to check on when you can actually use it. But they also, if you are waiting in line, you're already in line, what do? They've got these things that say how long that wait is going to be, right? So maybe wouldn't it be helpful to the customer if you saw that line and there was a sign there that said 5 minutes, right? Because we have like 10 minutes in between classes, and maybe you've already come from Hayes Hall and you're going into the Beehive, and you're thinking, I'm going to get a drink beforehand, and if that line is past the 5 minutes and you've got 5 minutes, you're going to go, I'll have to come back. Or you talk to somebody in line and ask them to order for you, right? So maybe that's what we'll do. So that could be something that just simplifies the planning for the customers of that coffee shop. Okay? Second is locating. So customers need to gather information before they can do the job, right? So this is the second step. So U-Haul, for instance, they create these pre-made packets for someone who is going to load up their belongings and whatnot. And so I was thinking, well, maybe like the Hilltop, right? When you're thinking about the idea of creating this safe and attractive path to the businesses of the Hilltop, maybe you could have, maybe you develop a map with coupons and stuff. So you kind of pre-make what it is that you have, and you basically make it easier for people who are going to hire that path to get the job done, that they have something that's easy to locate the places that they want to go to, easy to locate the actual coupons that they might use when they're there. Third, preparing. Okay, so setting up the environment to do the job, right? So Bosch, if it's saw here, they have preset things on here for certain kinds of cuts, just to make it easy for the person who's using the saw to get a job done, right? So for the classroom desk configuration, is there something that you could create that has some pre-made plans? Maybe it's, for instance, if you're going to create a room with tables like this, and you have 4 chairs around, well, what if you have just enough people to have teams of 3? Is there some kind of pre-made plan that this could switch into some other configuration? And it could be something that would be easily used by the professor, or maybe easily understood by the students, right? Because it's hard for the professor to always say, all right, get into your teams, right? And then everybody has to get up. If there's some kind of pre-made configuration that would be easy for students to actually respond to, that might be helpful, right? Confirm. So in the hiring of the product to get something done, verify that they're ready to perform the job, right? So what might that be? Well, maybe with scuff prevention, how would you know when the table is ready to perform the job of not scuffing the floor? Is that?
Trial runs.
Trial runs? Okay, well, that would be a way to test it.
Yeah.
What would be, think about, for instance, a toothbrush. How does a toothbrush tell you that it's ready to perform? you guys have, some of your toothbrushes have a color on it, and then the color starts to get smaller and smaller on it the more that you use it, so that if the color is just a sliver, that basically you've used it too long, it's time to get a new one, right? So maybe there's something about the table, the scuff pad, that it turns a different color once it's been used too much, and then you know, oh, wait, just like an eraser, right? Maybe if you had an eraser that turned a different color, and you knew, oh, the next time I'm going to erase on this, I'm probably going to hit metal or something, right? So that would be an indicator that could confirm that your product is ready to perform, right? So those are some, and it depends upon what projects you have. You know, how would you know that your classroom is ready to perform? Maybe it's about the setup with the visual setup or something, and having some indicator light or something like that. So, executing, how do you carry out the job? Preventing delay. So for instance, Kimberly Clark creates this product that warms people when they're being operated on. And one of the issues that people have had is their blood pressure goes down too low, but having them warm throughout the process prevents that problem from interfering with the recovery of someone with surgery. So they're thinking ahead, oh, let's keep them warm while they're being operated on. So what could you do to prevent problems when your job is being executed? For the voice control, for instance, what could you do for voice control that might prevent problems? I think about it when I make a call from my car. Right? I say, I call my wife, and her name is Farrelly. Okay? So it's hard to pronounce it. So sometimes I say, call Farrelly. And what's the next thing? Will my car call Farrelly, or does it do something else?
Are you sure you want to call this number?
Yeah. Are you sure you want to call Caroline? No, no, no. Right? So having something repeat that. So if you're doing the voice control thing, maybe you need it to repeat back. Are you sure you want to do it? Right? Because otherwise, you're calling somebody who you definitely don't want to call. Right? So that could be a problem. So doing something like that could help with making the execution work. Monitoring, so assessing whether the job is being done, executed successfully, ongoing. So again, maybe for the voice control, maybe it's just a light that, when you are talking, maybe the light lights up as you're talking so that you know that you're talking loud enough, right? You might be talking over here, and then whatever it is that's trying to pick up the voice control isn't, so showing the actual wavelength of what you're saying. So that could be something that's monitoring. Modify. So how do you make sure that alterations that need to be made are dealt with? So Apple and Microsoft do a good job with this with the automatic updates now, right? It used to be such a big pain in the neck where you'd always have to go in and do this download. I mean, we still have to kind of do it, right? But when there's a big bug fix or something. But having automatic updates in the background, oh my goodness, that saves a lot of headache, I think, for us. So what could you do with your projects for this? Maybe for the classroom. I'm just kind of thinking about one thing that can take time is, if we've got all these whiteboards up here and you're writing on it and whatnot, what does a professor do after class? Spends about 5 minutes wiping it off, right? And there's only 10 minutes between class, and so and then you're talking to other students, you probably want to save time with that. So how can you save time with that? Maybe you need to make a big squeegee or something that you can just go, or maybe there's something else. Maybe there's bonus points for a student who can erase the boards.
That's a good idea.
Right? Yeah, there you go. You know, it's something like that that helps the alteration so that you're not constantly doing the same thing over and over. And then the last step is concluding. How do you wrap things up? It's a pun, because I've got the example of, you know, instead of the Band-Aid, right, when you have a Band-Aid on, what's the worst thing in the world is to, when it's healed, to tear it off, right? And it hurts like crazy. Well, 3M has made these bandages that then don't stick and don't stick to each other, so it's easier to take it off and it's not such a big problem, right? So what could that mean? I've been watching on Netflix the Marie Kondo shows. You know, Marie Kondo, she's got this thing about how to tidy up and how to organize your stuff. And she uses feng shui as a philosophy of how you do it. And so, for instance, she has you fold your clothes. So if you're going to put your clothes in a dresser, how do you do it? You fold your clothes and you put a shirt, and then you put another shirt on top, and another shirt on top of that. Well, so what if you want to wear the shirt that's on the bottom? Well, you have to kind of lift it up, or maybe you don't even know the shirt is there, right, because it's covered up. But otherwise you're making a mess of everything when you have to pull it out. And so what she says is you fold up your shirts into this rectangle, and then you set it up vertically, so that in your dresser, each of your shirts is vertical, so you can see all of your shirts at the same time. So in thinking about, for instance, the soccer goals, if the idea is you're going to create foldable soccer goals, it's not going to be helpful if you can fold them up and then shove them way in the back of some area that then has all these other things there, because access is going to be really tough, and you're going to have to take everything else out, and maybe other things don't have wheels and stuff, and so it's going to be just as hard. So instead, maybe you need to be thinking about that whole closet, if you will, of stuff, and how do you access everything you need to. Maybe it's more than just creating foldable soccer goals. Maybe you're going to have to create some other things, or position them in a way in which you can access everything in that space, right? So it's thinking a little bit broader about how do you, once you've done with that particular aspect of the job, how can it then be easier to start up the next time? So that's the idea here, is looking at this as a job to be done, hiring this product or this service or this design, hiring this design for a job to be done, and then breaking that down. And so these are the takeaways for today then. Talked about observation, right? And so observe with empathy, putting yourself into your customer's position, thinking about how you might actually make observations in different ways, develop insights for innovative ideas. So the insight part means that you need to reflect on the observations. So using the empathy map might be a way to kind of collect and categorize everything that you have written down in your notes. Right? So you've got to make sure you're writing the stuff down when you're doing this. And then help customers at every step of the process. Okay? And that's the idea. That's kind of what I'm going to leave you with as the wisdom for today.